There are a lot of myths about keto diets, going back through obesity and diabetes. And, 100 years ago, actually, keto diets were used for obesity and diabetes treatment. I have these books in my office that I show people. What are some of the myths about cancer? I suppose they might be diet related or not diet related, but what are some of the myths you see in your practice?
Yeah. I think just as with all chronic disease, diabetes, obesity, we constantly hear this plant-based diet mantra, right? That's the biggest one that, all cancer patients should eat a plant-based diet or a Mediterranean
I hear
diet.
that. It's in our area too.
Right. It's everywhere. I don't care what disease you have. I feel like that's kind of the tagline. And we have to remember that the majority of that data came from observational kind of healthy user bias studies, meaning they look at a population and they say, these people are more likely to get cancer and these people are less likely to get cancer, but they fail to control for all of the other nuances. So people who tend to eat more meat also tend to be obese and diabetic and smokers and sedentary and eat processed foods and high sugar diets. So what we really need to do is look a little bit more at the mechanisms as well as any true randomized trial. And I will say that I hear a lot in the prostate cancer space. Well, I have to eat a low fat plant-based diet because that's what the Dean Ornish trial showed. Well, just to be clear, Dean Ornish looked at less than 30 patients, half of them following kind of standard of care. The other half, it was an intensive dietary and lifestyle management. These people, yes, they ate a low-fat, mostly plant-based diet, but what do we do when we eat a low-fat diet? We cut out donuts and pizza and French fries. And so a lot of those high carb, high fat foods that are big insulin drivers are removed. But in addition, they did support groups and meditation and exercise, and they did a lot of other things that might also help lower insulin. And interestingly, the difference in PSA, this was in early stage observation patients, so they weren't even actively undergoing any kind of cancer therapies. And there was a slight reduction in PSA in the group that was doing the aggressive interventions, and there was a slight increase in PSA. But they were plus or minus, if I remember correctly, like 0.3. So they went from like 6.2 down to 6.0 and 6.2 up to 6.5. And really, in my world, that's the same number. It's still sixes. But that gets used a lot for we need to eat this way. But what we know in prostate cancer is insulin, IGF-1. IGF-1 is one of the bigger ones. And I will tell you that, I've had people following plant-based, high fruit, vegetable diets, and they're driving their IGF-1s up. Yeah. So it's really about looking under the hood.
I had a brush with cancer trial, a couple of trials. Steve Friedland was an investigator who was here at Duke, and the intent was to actually do biopsies again of the prostate to actually the study design was fantastic. You randomize people to either change the diet or not before you take the prostate out. And so you can actually look at the prostate specimens at prostatectomy when you take the prostate out for the cancer treatment. The study didn't get done adequately, but it would be a great design to do again. I kind of think of the plant-based Dean Ornish and all. I credit Dr. Ornish with bringing lifestyle to the table as a treatment. I mean, at an era when all doctors, including me, are thinking drugs and all, bringing lifestyle as a legitimate treatment was really important. However, you can kind of think of it like Ford and the Model T, for example. Credit the discovery of the automobile, but there's so many other automobiles now. You wouldn't get any mileage, pun intended, saying, those Teslas don't work. You have to drive a Ford because Ford was the first one, or,
Right.
So it's the idea that if it's the only one, it must be the only one. Well, if it's the only one you've studied, it doesn't mean it's the only one. And so the disservice that world has done to the lifestyle approach is that they've made it seem like theirs is the only way.
100%.
I try to think of the car model, the car
right.
metaphor.
But I always go back to, if you want to follow, I try not to get people to follow plant-based diets because I've just seen over and over and over again, it just doesn't do the job. But if you wanted to flavor your ketogenic diet differently, you want to do it more Mediterranean, you want to do it slightly, more plant-based. Well, let's work on that, and let's move your numbers, the ones that matter, insulin, IGF-1, et cetera, into the optimal range. But another thing why some folks are almost nervous about a ketogenic diet, right, is meat, like protein, stimulates mTOR, stimulates that growth pathway. Meat is bad. Again, meat in the setting of a high carb diet can stimulate that, but there's some beautiful research. And to really get into some of these interventions, you got to go back decades, when diet was actually looked at as therapeutic, and really looking at taking in protein in the setting of a low carbohydrate diet, far, far less insulin stimulation than in a high carbohydrate diet. And if you do it protein in fasting, so right, they fasted people and then gave them protein, and they really didn't have that drive. So if we're following a ketogenic diet, right, a fasting mimicking diet, and we're including that protein, we should have far, far less insulin driving. And I will tell you, I can put people on, almost carnivore or carnivore-ish diets and see their insulin and IGF-1 come down.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.